Hi guys, let's talk DSLR cameras and whether we should still buy one in 2025. Well, in my opinion, you'll have to ask yourself several questions if you're considering buying a DSLR in this next year. Those questions are you on a tight budget? Are you just starting off in photography? Are you happy with not having the latest high-end cameras? And are you prepared to buy used? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, and definitely if the answer to all of those questions is yes, then you should definitely consider buying a DSLR used in 2025. Allow me to elaborate. Now let me qualify that just very quickly. I would consider buying DSLR cameras in 2025 if the answer is yes to any of those questions, as long as that DSLR is a used camera. Now, the way the mirrorless camera market has taken off and the technology in those cameras continues to just develop on and on, it means that the new camera market doesn't have very many, if any, last time I checked, DSLRs available to buy from new. And so it's a bit of a moot point. If you're buying a DSLR in 2025, absolutely consider it if it is a used camera. Now, the knock-on effect, if you like, of all of those mirrorless cameras developing and coming available at higher specs and higher price points is that the used market is being flooded with great DSLR bodies that offer really good value for money and more bang for your buck versus buying or outlaying the same amount of money on the new mirrorless camera. The price of those also continues to fall. I'll do an updated video soon, like the one I did on this channel about a year ago, where I looked at all the kind of average used prices of DSLRs currently in the market that you can get. And look, if you look even at prices in that video compared to where we are now, the prices just continue to fall and fall on what is some really great DSLR bodies. But anyway, let's jump into, first of all, the positives or the pros of buying a DSLR in 2025. I personally think there are a lot of positives to buying a DSLR in 2025 used. You might not get the technology that you get on the latest mirrorless cameras, but you will, as I said a moment ago, get a lot more bang for your buck. If you're, for argument's sake, looking at a brand new mid-range mirrorless camera, for the same amount of money, you're almost certainly going to be able to pick up a top-of-the-range old DSLR camera that might have been a flagship camera a couple of years ago. And for most people, the functionality, the capability, the technology in that older DSLR will be absolutely fine and will still be an upgrade on what you've got now, assuming you're not already shooting with top-of-the-line gear. Now, I'm a Canon man. I shoot Canon. I always have shot Canon. So let me give you a very quick example of a scenario today should you want to do it. The 1DX range was always the flagship range in the Canon lineup. It was used by pros around the world. But with the advent of the mirrorless camera, the 1DX range was halted production after the Mark III, which was out in 2020. So literally now quite a number of years ago. So that Mark III, brand new, you'd have been looking at paying £7,000 here in the UK for that body. Right now, you can go to any number of used camera stores online and pick that body up for around £2,500, which is a real steal. I have seen them for less than £2,000 from camera shops that offer a warranty and all the rest of it, but they were incredibly well used and a little bit bashed up, but probably in fine working order. And you can continue to go back along the 1DX range, a slightly older version of 1DX Mark II. The market is flooded with used ones of those right now for less than £1,000, mostly around the £700 mark. I've got one of those myself. It is a brilliant bit of kit, and the fact you can now pick it up for that kind of sum of money is kind of astounding, really, and just kind of shows the value that you can get in the used DSLR market right now. A few years ago, they also released a 7D Mark II, which was kind of more of a mid-range camera. It was still, I think, described as being for professionals. And that brought with it some great functionality. It could shoot 10 frames per second in terms of your burst shooting for sports and wildlife. It was a crop sensor, it had some great video functionality. I think brand new, you were looking at several £1,000s for one of those. Right now, albeit it is getting on in age. They are available for about £300 used. It is quite nuts, to be honest with you. Yes, that camera, like the others you'll come across, will have at least one, if not two successors in the mirrorless range since then. It's probably the same across Nikon and other brands. But it's worth doing your homework because you can really pick up quite amazing DSLR deals on prices that would never have previously been possible. So buying a used DSLR in terms of what you get for it in 2025, I think there is a great deal of value to be had. Additionally, the lenses that you need on these DSLRs are going to be a lot cheaper as well than the newer counterparts. And that is because, again, they're older in kind of age and technology and possibly performance. I've done some work previously kind of analysing the difference between like a Mark 1 and Mark 2 on the old Canon EF 70-200mm f2.8 lenses, and while the Mark II was a bit sharper overall, there isn't a massive bit of difference. So when you consider now that those types of lenses on the EF mount, that is the old Canon DSLR mount if you like, they're now going to 70-200mm lenses. You can pick them up for just hundreds of pounds now, second hand. For the latest version on mirrorless, if you were to buy new, you're looking at around £2,000 for that. And I know you can get converters as well so that you can use your EF lenses on the RF mount. But again, it's another consideration. If you want the lenses that are designed specifically to work great on these mirrorless cameras, then you will obviously have to pay the difference there as well. So buying DSLR can present savings and also access to a greater number of lenses that are available for those mounts. But obviously there are disadvantages with buying DSLRs in 2025, and probably the main one, as brands continue to develop their mirrorless ranges, the DSLRs are increasingly being left behind, and that doesn't just mean for production of new bodies, it means the production of parts for bodies that are already out there in the marketplace. So for example, if you need to replace a shutter on cameras of a certain age, manufacturers may have stopped making that part, so you could go and buy yourself a nice used DSLR second hand, and if that say 3 or 6 month warranty passes and then the shutter goes on that camera, you might simply have no way of fixing that body, and it is essentially then a very heavy and very nice looking paperweight. I had to get the 1D Mark IV I own. That shutter went on me a couple of years ago and I had to get it replaced, and already at that point Canon had stopped making the part I needed. Thankfully, I found a shop that still had one in stock and were able to do the repair for me. But that is like quite a good warning sign that as these cameras age and we move into newer technologies and mirrorless cameras, some of the parts on the older cameras just won't be available, be it something as significant as a shutter or even the smaller cosmetic bits you might need. So keep that in mind as well. And the other thing to mention in terms of disadvantage, I'd say, with buying a DSLR is if you are in direct competition with a photographer who is using kind of newer or higher end mirrorless cameras, especially if you're shooting in poor light or something like that, like sports, if you're trying to sell into the same places he or she is, then you might struggle as well and need to actually consider a mirrorless camera, because the image quality that those guys with the high-end mirrorless cameras are using is likely to be a lot better than what your old DSLR will pump out, and so definitely it is worth just keeping that in mind as well. So in summary, if you are not too bothered about budget, not too bothered about buying used, or you're just starting off in photography and want to get more bang for your buck in terms of functionality, then buying a DSLR used in 2025 might still be a really viable option for you. However, mirrorless cameras do continue to evolve and they are the future of photography, like it or not. And so if you are planning to hold on to your camera for a really, really long time, be aware that during that period of time, let's say you buy a DSLR used this year and hold on to that as your main body for maybe 3 years, in that time, mirrorless technology will be another 3 years on. Now, if you're a hobbyist or an amateur semi-pro photographer, that might not be a big or important thing to you, but if you are looking to do anything resembling commercial work, selling your images, then you could end up very quickly on a very old and very antiquated DSLR. It may matter, it may not, but it is something definitely to consider. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next video.